Meet Maya Caldwell, a sharp and fearless 34-year-old woman with a quiet confidence that hides a dangerous secret. Driving home late one night in Brookdale, Georgia, she's pulled over by two officers with bad intentions. They think they've got an easy target. They think they're in control. But what they don't know. Maya isn't just any woman, she's a CIA operative. And the setup they planned so carefully. It's about to explode in ways they never saw coming. If you love shocking twists and real justice served, hit subscribe, more incredible stories are on the way. Late at night in Brookdale, Georgia, the streets were empty, the only sound a distant train whistle echoing through the humid southern air. Maya Caldwell, a 34-year-old black woman, drove her dark blue Chevrolet Tahoe down a quiet stretch of road, her hands steady on the wheel. She had spent months undercover in this town, gathering intelligence, and tonight, she was finally heading home. The thought of leaving Brookdale behind brought a small sense of relief, but something gnawed at her, a lingering tension she couldn't quite shake. She glanced at the dashboard clock. 12:17 a.m. The street lights flickered as she passed, casting long shadows over the deserted sidewalks. The town slept, unaware of the corruption woven into its police force, something Maya had uncovered firsthand. As she reached an empty intersection, she slowed, her sharp eyes catching every detail. Then, red and blue lights erupted in her rearview mirror. The distant hum of crickets was drowned out by the sharp whoop of a siren. Maya inhaled slowly, gripping the wheel. This wasn't a routine stop. Something was wrong. The flashing red and blue lights painted streaks across the pavement as Maya Caldwell pulled her Chevrolet Tahoe to the side of the road. The humid Georgia night felt heavier now, pressing in on her like an unseen force. The road ahead remained deserted, the streetlights flickering weakly, as if sensing the tension about to unfold. In the rearview mirror, she watched as two officers exited their Brookdale County Sheriff's Department cruiser. Deputy Travis Lane, a broad-shouldered, imposing man in his early 40s, adjusted his belt as he approached her window, moving with the confidence of someone who had done this before. His younger partner, Officer Drew Mitchell, barely past 28, followed a few steps behind, his posture stiff, uncertain. Maya remained calm, keeping her hands where they could see them, her instincts sharp. This wasn't just a routine stop. The way Lane walked, slow, deliberate, predatory, sent a clear message: he wasn't here to issue a simple citation. She rolled down her window as Lane leaned in, his flashlight sweeping across her face with unnecessary scrutiny. "License and registration," he said, his tone flat, uninterested in a response. Maya met his gaze without hesitation. She had dealt with men like him before. "Of course, officer," she said smoothly, but deep down, she already knew. This was a setup. Maya reached for her license and registration, her movements deliberate, steady. She had been trained for moments like this: high tension, hidden danger, unseen threats. Lane's flashlight lingered on her face, scanning her like she was already guilty. "You know why I pulled you over?" he asked, voice thick with false authority. Maya met his gaze. "No, officer. I wasn't speeding, and I came to a full stop at the intersection." Lane smirked, tilting his head. "That's not what I saw." His fingers tapped the roof of her SUV, slow and deliberate. "You rolled through that stop sign. That's a moving violation." Maya's grip tightened on her papers. A blatant lie. She had stopped, fully, carefully. She knew it. He knew it. But this wasn't about a traffic violation. This was about something else. Before she could respond, Mitchell called out from behind the SUV. "Hey, Lane. You might want to take a look at this." Lane straightened, his smirk deepening. He handed Maya's license back, barely glancing at it. "Stay in the car," he ordered before striding to the back. Maya shifted slightly, watching in her side mirror as Mitchell pointed at something in the trunk. His voice was low, conspiratorial. Lane nodded, and their eyes met for a fleeting second, a silent agreement. That was all Maya needed to confirm it. This was a setup. Maya sat motionless, her fingers resting lightly on the steering wheel as she watched the scene unfold in her side mirror. Lane and Mitchell stood at the back of her SUV, their heads close together, speaking in hushed tones. Their postures were too casual, too rehearsed. They weren't discovering something unexpected, they were orchestrating a performance. Mitchell reached into the trunk and pulled out a small, unmarked bag, holding it up like a trophy. His mock surprise was almost theatrical. Well, he drawled, shaking his head. What do we have here? Lane turned back toward Maya, his expression stone-cold, unreadable. But she caught the flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. He was enjoying this. Step out of the vehicle, ma'am, he ordered. Maya didn't move. May I ask why? Her voice was even, controlled. Lane's lips curled slightly. We have reason to believe you're in possession of illegal substances. His tone was clipped, practiced. Maya's gaze flicked to the bag of powder in Mitchell's grip, then back to the officers. It hadn't been there when she left home. She knew that. Her expression didn't change, but inside, her mind was already racing, calculating, preparing. Then, with a quiet, unreadable smile, she simply said, "You're making a mistake." Lane's smirk widened, his grip tightening on his utility belt as he stepped closer. "Oh, I don't think so," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Maya held his gaze, her expression unreadable. She had faced far greater threats than two crooked cops on a quiet Georgia road. But she also knew the rules of this game, for now, she had to play along. With measured calm, she turned, placing her hands behind her back just as Mitchell yanked her arms roughly, snapping the cold steel cuffs around her wrists. His touch was deliberately harsh, a power move. Lane leaned in close, his breath hot against her ear. "You know," he murmured, "I see cases like yours all the time. Pretty little things who think they're smarter than the law." Maya didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, a hint of amusement flickering in her eyes. "And I see men like you," she replied smoothly. "Every time, they think they're untouchable. And every time, they're wrong." Mitchell scoffed, but Lane's smirk faltered just for a second. "Get her in the car," he snapped. Maya allowed herself to be led away, but her mind was already 10 steps ahead. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. The Brookdale County Sheriff's Station was dimly lit, its linoleum floors scuffed from years of wear. The air smelled of stale coffee, sweat, and bureaucracy. As Maya stepped inside, flanked by Lane and Mitchell, the room hummed with low laughter and quiet conversations. Officers glanced up, eyes flicking over her like she was just another name on a report. Lane gave a mocking chuckle, nudging Mitchell. "Got ourselves a real catch tonight." Mitchell smirked, tossing the plastic-wrapped bag onto the booking counter with a dramatic flourish. "Cocaine. Intent to distribute," he announced. The desk sergeant, an older man with graying hair, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Maya remained silent, her hands still cuffed behind her back, her posture perfectly straight, unervingly composed. She let them think they had her exactly where they wanted her. Lane stepped in front of her, his voice low, smug. "You want to start talking now, or save the tears for court?" Maya finally spoke, her voice soft, deliberate. "Oh, I'll talk," she said, holding his gaze with unsettling confidence. "And when I do, you'll wish you never met me." Lane's smirk faltered, just for a second, before he covered it with a forced chuckle. "Put her in interrogation," he muttered. The real game was about to begin. Beyond the glass of the interrogation room, Deputy Eric Hayes sat at his desk, watching. At 26 years old, he was still new to the force, still learning the ropes. But something about this arrest didn't sit right. He had seen plenty of drug busts in the few months since he joined, but this one felt too clean, too easy. The drugs had been sitting right there in the trunk, like a gift-wrapped conviction. Lane and Mitchell were acting too smug, too eager to show off their big arrest. Hayes pulled up Maya Caldwell's file. Her record was pristine, not even a speeding ticket. Her employment history was vague, listed as an independent consultant, but there was a strange gap, years missing with no explanation. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, debating whether to dig deeper. From inside the interrogation room, Maya sat perfectly still, hands resting on the cold metal table, her expression unreadable. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't even slightly rattled. Hayes' stomach tightened. Something was off. His gaze flicked back to the security feed, rewinding the arrest footage. He watched as Lane opened Maya's trunk before she even stepped out of the car. His pulse quickened. They hadn't found the drugs. They had placed them there. Across town, in a nondescript office building, a small red light blinked on a secure console. The signal had been sent. At a long table, Agent Connor Blake, a seasoned CIA field director, leaned forward, his sharp eyes narrowing as the notification appeared on the screen. Maya Caldwell's distress beacon. She had been compromised. Blake's jaw tightened. He had worked with Maya for years, she never tripped her signal unless the situation was critical. He tapped the screen, pulling up real-time data. Brookdale County Sheriff's Station. "Get the team ready," he said, his voice steady, controlled. Around him, 4 agents moved into action, loading tactical equipment, laptops, and encrypted communication devices. This wasn't just about retrieving one of their own, this was about exposing something bigger. Blake glanced at the arrest report already circulating in the system. Possession with intent to distribute. His lips pressed into a thin line. "They have no idea what they've just done," he muttered. His second-in-command, Agent Olivia Marsh, looked up. "ETA." Blake checked his watch. Less than an hour. He turned back to the screen, watching Maya's location blink steadily. She was holding her ground. Now, it was their turn to make a move. Back at the Brookdale County Sheriff's Station, Deputy Eric Hayes couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at his gut. The arrest report was already logged, possession with intent to distribute, a case that should have been open and shut. But something didn't add up. He clicked through the station's security footage, rewinding to the moment Maya was pulled over. His pulse spiked as he froze the frame. There, clear as day, was Lane opening her trunk before she even stepped out of the car. He let the footage play, watching Mitchell pull the evidence from inside, like he already knew it was there. Hayes swallowed hard, a cold weight settling in his chest. He had heard the whispers about Lane before, about cases that felt too perfect, suspects who claimed innocence but never stood a chance. But this? This was blatant. His fingers hovered over his keyboard. If he reported this, he knew exactly what would happen. Lane and Mitchell would close ranks, the department would look the other way, and he'd be branded as a traitor. But then, he glanced at the interrogation room camera. Maya sat there, calm, steady, like she was waiting for something. Hayes exhaled sharply, then clicked open a new email window. He started typing. "To whom it may concern, there's something wrong in this station." Inside the Brookdale County Sheriff's Station, the air felt heavier, thick with an unease that no one had spoken aloud. Officers moved through their routines, laughing, sipping coffee, filing reports, business as usual. But in the interrogation room, Maya Caldwell sat motionless, her expression unreadable. She was waiting. Across town, in a black SUV speeding down the highway, Agent Connor Blake checked his watch. ETA, 10 minutes. His team sat in silence, their earpieces buzzing with encrypted chatter. They logged the charges, Agent Olivia Marsh reported, scanning her tablet. Standard possession with intent to distribute. But, she paused, scrolling. There's a flagged message. Blake leaned closer. From who? An internal deputy. Eric Hayes. Looks like a rookie. Marcia's brow furrowed. He's questioning the arrest. Says he has footage proving the drugs were planted. Blake's jaw tightened. They had their opening. Back at the station, Hayes wiped his sweaty palms on his uniform, his heart hammering. He had sent the message. Now all he could do was wait. Then, the station doors burst open. Men in dark suits, badges flashing, stepped inside. Federal investigation, Blake's voice cut through the room. We need to speak with your officers. Now. And just like that, the game had changed. The Brookdale County Sheriff's Station fell into a tense silence. Officers at their desks froze mid-conversation, their eyes flicking toward the entrance where 4 federal agents had just walked in. Agent Connor Blake stepped forward, his CIA badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. We're here on an active investigation, he announced, his voice steady but firm. His gaze scanned the room, locking on to Deputy Eric Hayes, who sat rigid at his desk. Hayes swallowed hard, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. He had sent the email less than 15 minutes ago. He hadn't expected a response this fast. Across the room, Lane and Mitchell stood near the break room, their earlier smugness replaced with thinly veiled unease. Mitchell glanced at Lane, waiting for his cue. Lane straightened, putting on a mask of authority. This is a local matter, Lane said smoothly, stepping forward. Not sure what business you all have here. Blake didn't flinch. We have reason to believe your officers are involved in illegal misconduct. His voice was calm, deliberate. Maya, still inside the interrogation room, watched everything through the two-way glass. A small, knowing smile curved at the corner of her lips. They had no idea what was coming next. A thick tension filled the station as Agent Connor Blake took another step forward, his badge raised high. The room, once filled with idle chatter and routine paperwork, now buzzed with unease. Lane's jaw tightened, but he forced a smirk. Illegal misconduct, he repeated, feigning confusion. That's a strong accusation, Agent. Blake didn't blink. He wasn't here to play games. We have evidence, he said flatly. His gaze flicked to Deputy Eric Hayes, who sat stiffly at his desk, his fingers curled against the armrests of his chair. Hayes felt his stomach twist. This was it. The moment of no return. He nodded slightly, confirming what Blake already knew. The agents moved swiftly. We need to access your records and speak with Deputy Travis Lane and Officer Drew Mitchell. Now. Mitchell swallowed hard, his hand twitching at his side. He wasn't built for pressure. Lane, however, kept his mask intact. Unless you have a warrant. We do. Agent Olivia Marsh held up a folder and stepped forward. Signed by a federal judge. You're done stalling. From behind the interrogation room glass, Maya Caldwell sat completely still, watching as the web of lies started to unravel. A storm was coming, and she was ready to watch it unfold. Lane and Mitchell sat in the interrogation room, their confidence shattered. The once smug officers now looked like caged animals, their backs pressed against the cold metal chairs. Across from them, Agent Connor Blake calmly laid out the evidence, security footage, falsified reports, planted evidence, and the long history of fabricated arrests. Lane clenched his jaw. This is ridiculous. You can't prove. Blake slid a USB drive across the table. Actually, we can. And we did. The door swung open, and in walked Maya Caldwell, her posture as poised as ever. Mitchell's face drained of color. What, how? Maya smiled. Surprised? She took a seat, folding her hands on the table. You should be. You tried to frame the wrong person. Lane's fists curled on the tabletop, but he had nothing left to say. The truth had already spoken for itself. Days later, the story broke across national news outlets. The Brookdale County Sheriff's Department was thrown into chaos, with multiple officers placed under investigation. Lane and Mitchell were charged with conspiracy, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. As for Deputy Eric Hayes, his decision to step forward made him a hero in the eyes of some and a traitor to others. But when he looked in the mirror, he saw something more important, a man who did the right thing. Maya, however, had already moved on. Weeks later, she sat outside a cafe in Washington, D.C., the sun warming her face as she sipped her coffee. A phone buzzed on the table. Agent Blake's name flashed on the screen. Ready for the next one? Maya exhaled slowly, a small, knowing smile forming. Always. Because where there's corruption, deception, and injustice, she'll be there. Watching. Waiting. Ready to act. Truth has a way of rising to the surface, no matter how deeply it's buried. In a world where power can be misused and justice can be manipulated, it's easy to feel like the odds are stacked against those who stand for what's right. But the truth is, integrity always matters, even when it feels like no one is watching. Maya Caldwell didn't fight back with anger or impulsive actions. She stayed calm, patient, and prepared. She knew that justice isn't always immediate, but those who build their power on lies will eventually be exposed. Her strength wasn't just in her skills as a CIA agent, it was in her discipline, awareness, and ability to stay ahead of the game. The same applies in everyday life. Whether you face injustice in your workplace, community, or personal relationships, the key isn't reacting emotionally, it's staying focused, gathering facts, and waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. Corruption thrives when good people stay silent, but as we saw with Deputy Eric Hayes, one decision, one moment of courage, can change everything. So, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you know something isn't right, remember this: your voice, your choices, and your actions matter. Sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to stand up and say, enough. If you love gripping stories of justice, truth, and unexpected twists, hit the subscribe button now. More incredible stories are coming soon, only on Daily Stories.